Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are watching this video from. Okay, so this is the round up section for this particular hipaa compliance project that we are deploying in Azure in GCP. Actually, we worked on the database deployment. We worked on the database, right? We deployed a database, all right, for the hipaa, and the final we went ahead to deploy backend server and configure the backend application to run right. Then we try to ensure that the private IP address is available, that is the database private IP address is available, and then that was what we did, and then it was able to connect. Google Cloud was able to create a VPC pairing between the two, between their own managed VPC where the database is running, and also the VPC which we created where the backend is running. All right, the VPC pairing was established, so that is actually why the database and the backend was able to talk to each other, right? So coming down to the front end, right? Coming down to the front end. So the front end, right? The front end needs to connect to the back end, okay, so that they can be able to interact together. All right. And I told us that by that the front end, if the front end needs to talk to the back end, all right. So there is a firewall here that permits that, and we have already configured that to allow the port 80 on the front and back end side to connect, right? So we are also going to look at that first. We are going to look at the front end part. I mean the back end firewall, and as well establish that the front end network can be able to connect to the back end firewall. Right. So again, if you remember when we were doing our PCI DSS compliant project, there is something I told us about, which is like a corpse origin policy. I think that is a cross origin policy. Uh, right? Cross origin policy. So the cross origin policy, look at this cross origin policy. So the developer implemented a cross policy origin, all right, which is like there's the policy HTML response header when used upon a document can be used to require sub resources to either be same origin within the document or come with a cross-origin resource policy, HTTP response header to indicate they are okay with being embedded. This is why the cross-origin value exists. So this is just like a security, all right? Security implemented on the back end to secure the backend code. Okay, so that no other person can access the backend except the what? Except the front end IP address. All right, no other person can access the backend except the front end IP address. So what we are going to do right now is that we are going to redeploy the front end, I mean the back end. We are going to redeploy the back end. But before we redeploy the back end, what we need to do is that we will, before we redeploy the back end, there is a couple of things we need to do. I will show us that. I'll show us how we what we need to do. Okay, because we need to go to the backend code of the need to go to the code of the backend, and then edit the front end, edit the cross origin policy by adding the IP address of the front end, by adding the IP address of the front end before we start it. But before we do this cross origin policy on the backend, before we do that, we must have set up everything on the front end and have the public IP address of the front end or the URL, the domain URL of the front end. Okay, then we can now use that with the port number to configure the cross origin policy on the back end. Okay, so that's actually, let me repeat that. Okay, so what I say is that there is a cross origin policy, right? There's cross origin policy. So please, I would like you to Google and study what cross origin policy is all about. All right. So there's a cross origin policy. right? That's call it, yes, correct. Okay, crop origin policy. That is this. Sorry for my spelling. Cross origin policy, right? So this policy is actually attached, all right? This policy is attached to the backend, right? We implement it on the backend code. So the developer embedded it on the backend code, all right? So this is just like internal firewall within the application, okay? Just like what internal firewall within the application that protects the what the URL or the access link or or at least, sorry, can I say that let me put that way, that will at least the required URLs that should access the backend. All right, I said that requires the URL that should access the backend. Let me take for example that when you go to the front end cross origin policy and backend cross origin policy, you allow digitalwitch.com, all right? You allow it on the cross origin policy. So what it means is that whenever somebody is trying to access the front end, right, you are going to access the front end through what digitalwitch.com. When you try to access it, right, the front end is trying to make a query, will try to make a query to the back end. And what is the link which the front end is using to make a query to the back end? Is using what? Is using uh, the domain to make a query, right? So we're trying to make a query, it will pass this level, come to the cross origin policy. The cross origin policy will now check what is the URL of this guy. So if the URL is starting what digitalwitch.com, so it is going to check the cross origin documentation and check the cross origin documentation. What is in the cross origin documentation? Is what is in cross origin documentation matching with what is being seen or what is trying to make a connection? So if it matches it, it will allow the front end to access the back end. Okay, but if it doesn't match, let's say that this now is not digitalwitch.com, but rather we have it to be say sales dot figure sales dot what digitalwitch.com. So if this particular stuff now is trying to make a connection to this now, right? So what the cross origin will check, it will check this and check if both of them are matching. So if both of them do not match, right, it will not allow, all right, it will not allow what it will not allow the backend to it will not allow the front end to access the backend. Okay, so that is to say that before we can be able to allow, right, configure the backend so as to ensure that the front end can access it, we also look at the cross origin policy within the application. Okay, so this is a security level implemented on the code level. It's a security measure implemented on the code level. It is a security measure implemented on the code level by the developer. But this is not infrastructure level. This is not an infrastructure issue, right? It's not an infrastructure concern, but rather it is what? It is the code level, which you need to sync with the developer to actually ascertain which type of what configuration or which type of policies documents that are allowed on the cross origin level. So we need to actually do that. Now coming to the front end, remember that the front end need to make a connection to the back end. And on the code level, we need to also ensure that the URL of the backend, I mean the endpoint of the backend, is actually what is being seen. All right. So we are going to actually look at that to see what I'm talking about later before we start the configuration. But now let us look at what we are going to be doing here on the front end side. So this is the things that we're going to be doing right now. From the front end side, we're going to be looking at what provisioning the front end server on the GCP. That's the first thing we need to do. Secondly, we have to head over to configure our DNS right on the name chip. So Namecheap is where we bought our domain. And I also want to let you know that some of us have already integrated Namecheap configuration to our Azure DNS zone, right? So this is what you need to do when you did that for Azure. If you are using Azure DNS zone, you don't worry of going to your Namecheap. Rather, you have to go to Azure DNS zone and create a record for IP address mapping this is at the IP address mapping on Namecheap. So, but your own may be Azure. Your own may be Azure, all right? Because that is actually what we are doing. So you're gonna create a record. So after that, we have to create what a front end repository in our GitHub, right? We are going to head over to GitHub and then we create our front end repository. So we are going to head over to in GitHub. So we are going to go to GitHub and and then create what front end repository. Then after which we have done this, right, the next line of action is that we need to edit the front end back end configuration. All right, the front end with we have to go edit the front end code. All right, so this is like we are going to edit the front end code. All right, with the back end configurations. Like that is the backend what endpoint or IP address, right? So that is actually what we are going to be editing the front end with. So that what this will help us do is that it's going to help the front end, all right? It's going to help the front end to connect to the back end, the actual required back end, right? It's going to help the front end to connect to the back end. And after that, we now have to upload what? Upload the front end to the back end. Upload the front end, upload the front end, upload the front end code to the back. Then after which I've done this, we have to install all the dependencies, right, of the back of front end and then start the application. Okay. Now, again, when we start the application, we also need to, I think before we start the application, let's go this way. Before we start the application, all right, this is going to be like the fifth. Before the start application, this is going to be sixth. Before we start application, see what we're going to be doing. Before we start application, we have to go to the backend, all right, and edit the records origin, records policy at the backend code and then with the front end URL. All right. Uh, to so URL document. Right. So I'm just want to show us how to do this so that every one of us will really understand because this is a high level of security within this project, some projects like this. Okay, be you anywhere you go with this particular project, you would really understand so many tools here that we just mentioned. We are mentioning here, right? Like I said, okay, let me draw this down here like this so that we will get that. Right. So now, okay, guys, you can see that this is actually what I'm doing right here. So first thing we need to do is let us just go to Google Cloud and then edit our firewall. All right. I mean, sorry, edit our. We need to edit the provision the server. All right. So that's actually what we're going to do. We have to provision the server and then configure front end IP to back end firewall. Right? So that's actually what we're going to be doing. So we will first of all go to what? We first of all go, okay, we have to go to this place. So what do we do now? Let us go. Let's go to first of all, let us go to the VPC, go to this is our Google Cloud, right, account, VMware, VM instance. So we have to click to create a virtual machine. Now, before we create this virtual machine, right, we need to go to VPC and check. This is the VPC section. I'm going to right click and open VPC. Okay. So while I'm creating this one, I'll check the VPC to configure the firewall. All right. Allow front end IP ranges at the backend level, backend firewall level. I mean, so this is a front end server. So let me increase my font for those of us that may be having issues, maybe having issues with small stuff. right? Okay, I think this is okay. So this is the IP address. This is the server name. All right. So let me go down to this point. I have to select the configuration. That's the machine size. So I'm still maintaining low level, and it's going to be like 0. What 03 dollar per hour, right? So I am still maintaining this low stuff. That is the E2 medium. E2 medium will give me about $25 per month, but I'm going to be paying like 0.03 per hour, right? So I have to now come down to decide where I need to configure the disk, right? So this is the disk. Also remember that I always like using what Ubuntu. So I have to select the Ubuntu image which I need to use in this particular configuration. So coming down here, I have to select under the operating system. I have to select to check for Ubuntu. So this is Ubuntu version. Ubuntu version 20 is okay, no problem. So I have to select this. This is the disk level. So since we don't need much volume, I'm gonna go with 10 disk. All right, this is okay for me. So I select this and I will come down a little. I'll come down a little. So coming down to the firewall level. So remember that on the front end firewall level, I've already created a firewall rule. So I may not be able to apply these firewall rules by default. So that because if I tick these things, do you know what it means? It means that it's going to create like three firewall rules for me, right? For HTTP, HPS, and the load balancer health check. So I don't need that because I'm not using load balancer. Neither am I using HTTP. The only thing I'm using was this guy, but I have already configured it already on the firewall level, right? Let me head over to the firewall and show you. So if you come down to the firewall, this is the VPC section, all right? So you can know how to search the VPC. Just come here, you type VPC, you check the VPC, and you log into the VPCs, right? So I'm still going to come back here, okay? Now, if you come down here, you see that we have the VPCs. These are all the VPCs that we need, that we have. And remember that we have created a VPC called what? hipaa VPC. Now, let's head over to the hipaa VPC. Now, when we come to the hipaa VPC, look at this. Under the hipaa VPC, all right, under the hipaa VPC section, we can see that the hipaa VPC, we have the back end rule, back end firewall, and then we have the front end firewall. Then let us check the tag. There are tags we use. We use a hipaa, and here also we use what? hipaa. Okay. So under the firewall rule, let me click on this. Let me click on the firewall rule. So on the firewall rule, as it's loading, okay, um, okay, on the firewall rule, you can see. Let me open it. You can see what the rule that I allowed. I allow ports 80 and port 443. Okay, I think I also need to allow ports what port 22. I also need to allow port 22. Right. So okay, so this is actually what I need to do. So the this thing that I allow is what? hipaa. Can you see hipaa? So I may remove this hipaa because hipaa have been used for backend. I may put it what? Front end hipaa. Right? So the tag I'm using is what? Front end hipaa. And that is what I'm going to use to create a front end system, right? So you can see that I'm allowing port 80, port 443, and port 120. If I'm still going to be using these two ports, this is actually what I'm going to be doing. I'll create it. Okay, I'm creating it now. I'm saving, updating the firewall rule. Okay. Now remember the tag that we use. The tag we use is what? Front end what? hipaa. Front end hipaa. Front end hipaa. So let's bear that in mind. I'm gonna copy this front end hipaa. That is under the firewall configuration because that tag is what I'm gonna be using to create um is to create what? To create um this thing. So to create the firewall, right? To create the server actually. Now let's go and then coming down here, I have to come down to if I want to install Nginx to monitor and log in. So I have to click here, but I'm not going to do that now. So coming down here, I'll select what? I'll select tag. Can you see network tag? I'll click it and add what? That front end hipaa. Okay, front end hipaa. Let me quickly show you what happens here. let me quickly show you what happens here. I need to bring my notepad, my paint, so that I can just give you a drawing to show you paint. So what happens here really is that now that we use the network tag, okay. So this is what happens. We have the virtual machine, which is like front end virtual machine, front end, right? So the front end has what front end have what called a network. Okay, so this front end have there may be multiple networks, all right, multiple rules, network rules, right? There may be multiple network rules. So now, for us to actually know the one when traffic is coming outside, which actual one do we tag? Which we do? How do we get this particular to a particular virtual machine really, right? So because in that network, in that VPC, there may be multiple subnets or two or three more subnets, right? Where the virtual machines will be residing, right? But we need to nail a specific traffic uh, to a particular virtual machine. And then if we are trying to configure a firewall rule and we go in to put all like this, all, right? So what it means is that we like say we selected go to the firewall, right? Instead of okay, let me just show you. Go to the firewall section instead of saying specific tag, specified target tag. Someone can select all instance in the network. Can you see all instance in the network? That means that this particular firewall will be for every systems in the network, and this firewall can open ports for all the systems in the network. But if you want to have a segregation, like a separate consigns, right, that is actually where we need to use the tag, right? So we can say, okay, we are creating a firewall and we are saying that this firewall will be designated to only front end guys. So what we're going to be doing is that we have to go and tag, right? Tag it with a specific tag, right? So that when we are tagging it with a specific tag, do you know what happens? So we also create a virtual machine and then we also tag it. We also tag the virtual machine, right? So what it means is that during the time of traffic movement, right? During the time of traffic movement between, because traffic must pass through the firewall, right? So the firewall will actually see, okay, where are you really going to? Which server machine, which server are you actually going to? But when the firewall look at the packet of this information and it will detect the IP address range, and then coming down to this place, it now say, okay, which particular net system is connected to this tag, all right? It will check all the systems that have a tag. The firewall will have the tag, and it will now forward it based on the system using the tag, all right? Allow that specific system to go. Can you see it? Instead of using all, we are now using what? Tag. Okay, so the tag, so when you are creating multiple tags, so if you have another network, another virtual machine, and you have another tag, I mean another firewall, right? So if you tag this one, what it means that it will be tagged to any systems that you really want to use it for. So both of them will now, so that in case that any traffic is coming, we'll have a direct trafficking, all right, a direct specified trafficking between the system. But if you just put it all, this firewall will be for every system. Every system will use it. So just bear that in mind. So because tag is very important in implementation. So now that we are already tagged, so what next we need to do is that we need to come down and then select our network. So you can see this is the default network under the network interface. You have to be very careful at this point. So you need to like click on to search the actual network. Look at this. And the one thing you need to also know that the VPC. Let us go to the subnet section. Now, when we created the firewall, when we created the VPC, really, VPC, when we created the VPC, we actually put it in a specific what network, right? We put it in a specific network. When we created a VPC, we actually put it in a specific what? This is the VPC. When we created a VPC, we created the two subnets. Okay, so each of the subnets is actually staying in a particular region. Can you see? So in GCP, Network VPC is a global object resources, right? It's a global resource. Why subnet is what? A regional resource. Because if you create a subnet, it must be residing in a specific what? Resource, a specific region. Okay. Now, when you are also provisioning a virtual machine, make sure that your virtual machine, the region where your virtual machine is in the region that the subnet is, right? You can see that this virtual machine that we're trying to create right now is in US region. Okay. So when we come down to select the network, we will also see that we can literally see the what? The subnet, which is this. I'll select and select the front end. Can you see it here now? This is it. Okay, let's assume that we just deleted this. We just deleted one ad, four ad. Let us go and change the region, right? You will see that we will not see. Let's select the region and change it to North America, Northeast America. Let's just select North America. Then we'll come down again to the network section. You'll see what it will tell us. Add a When we add right now, right, it will tell us that we are only seeing this guy. Now let's select this network, which is hipaa VPC. And when you select this network, you can say you must select a subnet. Now if you try to select a subnet, you can say no subnet in this region. Can you see it? No subnet in this region. So which means that we need to specify the region where the subnet is created. Look at it here, US region, right? Then we'll come down again to the subnet section, right? You can see that we can now see subnets. And then when we look at, you can see the front end subnet. So bear this in mind, is very important. Then we now have to come down, right? And then nothing else to do, guys. Nothing else to go at this moment. So we have to create. Please, if I am kind of fast, you can equally slow it, right? So that I can understand every bit of things that we are doing here. And remember that this is just like a kind of learning of what you have known so far, just more or less like learning what you have known so far, right? And bear in mind that I told us that there is reason why I use public IP address here. We can still edit it and remove it when we are done. I will still show you how to do that. And I promise you, when we were doing Azure, that I'm going to do that as well to remove the public IP address, which I did if you watch that video. And for this Google Cloud, I'm also going to be removing this. But the reason why I am allowing it is for me to test it within my local system or within my environment first. I mean, I'm not going to be in the cloud to test it, right? So I want to be outside to test it. So when I'm done with testing, so I can remove the public IP address. The only place that we're going to be allowing public IP address is at the front end, because definitely this is the IP address that we're going to be using to configure our DNM chip. Okay. So I'm going to be collecting this IP address, right? So let us see that we have already configured our file, our front end. All right. So let's go back to our stuff and we see that we have configured the front end, we have provisioned the front end, and we also configured the firewall. Okay, we have not done the configuration, back end configuration, back end firewall rule. Let's do that. Okay, so this is the front end, and the front end is going to be accessing the back end through the private IP address, right? You're going to be accessing the front end through the firewall IP address. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to allow this IP and this IP, these two public IP address for now. We are going to be allowing this network and this IP address. So let us copy both of them. Okay. Let's copy them and let us head over to the subnet section under the firewall rule. Let's go to the backend firewall. The backend firewall, like from the architecture, we say that okay, we need to configure the front end. We need to allow the front end to access the backend to backend at the firewall. So we are going to allow the firewall say allow this front end the IP address. I think the IP address is .2, right? Allow the front end IP address on a specific port and allow the public IP address also for testing on this particular port or the public user on this particular port. So we are going to be allowing these two IP addresses on the front backend level. So let's just head over to that. So this is the VPC, this is the firewall. Then we locate the front, the backend, right? This is the backend. Now when we click on the backend, so we have to edit the backend firewall so as to add the front end URL. Okay, see this is the actual IP address. So we added so many things here. So what we added here is that we added our public IP address that everybody You know, this is not wise. So I'm gonna add, look at this now. This is the subnet. So I'm gonna go to 0/24. Okay, so I'm gonna be collecting this. Exit it. Okay, see. Okay, it says that it's not accepting this. Duplicate. Okay, duplicate. Look at it. I've added it before. Oh, sorry. I've added that. Look at it here. I've added it already. So what I'm going to do now is that I need to add the IP address of the front end, the public IP address of the front end. Look at it. What I add now. So I have to save it. Okay, now that I've done this now, I've finished to go to the first line. So the next line is that we need to go and configure Namecheap. Okay, so and put the IP address of the front end. The IP address of the front end, right? So that's actually what we're going to be doing on the front end. Use and create a name record, which is this one line. We have to create a DNS record on Namecheap. All right, so this is the IP address this time. It's not this. All right, so we're gonna put that here. So this is the IP address. Okay, that's the IP address we're going to be doing. And besides, this is not the domain name. The domain we are going to be using is for Cloud9. Cloud9 in core in core related think dot online. All right. So this is the actual IP address we're going to be putting. So now let's head over to Namecheap. Namecheap login. So we are trying to log into Namecheap right now. So let's log in. I'm going to be logging into Namecheap. So this is my IP address. All right. So the firewall part is logging. Okay. All right. Okay, guys. I think we are in. Okay, so now we are into the Namecheap file, Namecheap portal. Okay, now look at this. Now this is the Cloud9 Incorporated, which is this one, right? So I am going to edit it, right? I'm going to edit it and then check the DNS, right? The DNS, there's under advanced. I'll select under advanced. So please let me also say this. If you transferred your DNS to Azure Zone, Azure DNS Zone, please don't come here again. You have to go to your Azure DNS Zone and do that configuration. But if you have not done that, you can stick here and do this. Okay. So let's create the record. You can see this is the okay. Let me delete all these ones that I've already created earlier. I'm deleting all these ones. Okay, so what we do is that we come here under add record. We come here and select what a record. So a record is for IPv4, while a record is IPv6. So I'm sticking out a record, and here we're going to be creating what at. Then when I put the IP address of the front end, right? So this is it. So we have to say okay, okay. So we have to say what okay, okay. Say we are saving it now. Now, when we have saved this, now you can see this is what we have. We can head over to a particular page. We can open a tab, right, and search for what, and search for dnschecker.org. Okay, DNS checker is actually where we check for what for propagation of DNS across the whole universe. Now, if you can see the map of the world, right? This is the map of the world. And these are all the servers. This is the location of all the servers of the DNS, right? DNS servers across the world. So for DNS to propagate, we need to give it a lot of time, after which I have already configured that on the DNS providers section, right? So we have to look at the points where we need to say the stuff need to propagate across all the regions. So now we have waited a little. Let us search that Cloud9 Incorporated. Let us search it now and see whether we can see the IP address. Can you see? This is what the IP address we just edited a few seconds ago. Can you see? Look at it now. Let's go back again. Can you see this? 34 and the dot one. It started with 34 and ended with what? Dot one. Okay, let's go again and check. So this is the name, and we search it, and we're able to see it now. Look at it. What is this now? 34. Look at it. What is this now? 34 what? 34.1. That is ending of it. And you can see that it has been populated except under one. This is under the China region. Can you see China region? But apart from every other one, we are good to go. Okay, so our domain have been propagated across the whole nation, across the whole countries, except in China. I don't know why they are still delaying. So I have to forget about that and then move over. Let's ever check now. So we have configured our name chip, and right now we can, if we deploy any application in the front end, we can reach it through our domain name instead of the putting the IP address. Now look at this. We have done. We have cleaned this one. Anyone that we clean, we have to change the color. We have to change the color so that we know what we are really doing. Okay, we have changed this one, and we also have configured this one too. Okay, we have done this too. So the next thing we are going to be doing is that we are going to create a repository, the front end repository in GitHub. Let's head over to GitHub. Okay, this is our GitHub repository. Okay, I have created a GitHub repository already for front end. Look at it. If you check our domain stuff and then check all the repository we have. So this is the what? This is the backend we had before, and now here is the front end. Okay. So at the front end level, so we need to do what? We need to log in to the front end. Look at it now. If you open the front end, it is still an empty repository. Okay. So it is an empty repository. So we need to edit the code and then push it here. Okay, before we do that, let's go to our front end, right? Let's go to the front end section. Um, let's go to our DNS. Look at this is our servers, right? Now we need to. I have the code in my system. That's the front end code. You know, we are here the front end, and we need to push our code, right? Let's check our where we are. So we have created a repository. Let me edit it as well. We have created a repository. Okay, the next line of action is that we need to do what? Edit the front end code with the backend configuration, like the endpoint or the IP address of the backend, and then upload the code to what to Git the front end GitHub repository. So that's actually what we're going to be doing right now. Okay, so let me open the back front end application. Okay, this is our front end code, right? So this is our front end code. And look at the front end code. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to open this particular code now in VS Code, right? So right click and then I click on Word. I click command line. This is the command, and I say what? Code dots. So it will open VS Code on my local system. Look at it now, it has been opened. So if you check here now, this is our front end code. Okay, this is our front end code. Now, if you check, like I said the other time, now this is the when you come to the code, this particular part is the public, this is the source, which is the source is the code, right? And this is the package.json and package.json.log. Then other one is readme file. Okay. So the when we are configuring, let's say this is the source. Okay. When we open the source, we have and it has some modules, right? First module is what? Appointment component and also user component. So these are the two components that we're going to be editing here, right? So this is optional for different applications development, right? But for now, it is mandatory that we need to edit this stuff. So what we need to do is actually this component that need to talk to the backend. These components, this particular application appointment component and the user management component. These are the two components that we need to talk to the backend. Okay, so let us open this particular one, and we can see that we have how many modules in this component? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modules. Now let's add appointment. If you click on add appointment, the code of add appointment will open. Now, if you come down to line 22, this is line 22. Can you see line 22? You see where it need to fetch the backend. Okay, so it's saying localhost, but this is not the IP address of the backend. So we have to go to the cloud and then check what's the IP address of the backend. Now the IP address, the connection have to done privately, right? This is the private IP address of the backend. This is the private IP address of the backend. Okay, so we have to go to our VS Code. Okay, so this is the VS Code. We have to go and then change this particular localhost with the backend IP address. Can you see it? Backend IP address. Make sure that this is correct. Make sure that this is correct. Then we have done for this one now. We check that is all what we need to do for this particular one, right? Then we can now click the next component. This one is assign appointment. So we click and then change this looker as well, right? Can you see? First. So for me, what I normally do is that I have to list all the components. Look at it now. For you to make it faster, okay, let me just put it. For you to make it faster, I can copy like this now, okay, and copy it because I have a places that I needed to put this. I'm going to put it here and then here. So if you want to make it fast, okay, this one I've changed this one, right? I've changed this one. You can do it if you want. You can just do it manually. Look at this now. Can you see? Like I'm changing this one now. Like you say, okay, this is the IP address, right? So let's just make it manually. I'm done for this one. I'll click on this one. So this is the IP address. I'll change it as well. Okay, come to this one as well. I'll see this. I'll change it as well. And check if it's only this component. Scroll down. I think it's only this component that we have here. I'll come down to this one. I can see this stuff again here. Okay, so check again. You can see no other one. I come to view my appointment. I'll see this one. I'll place it here. So this one is like have it to here. I'll select it as well here as well, and then add. Please pay good attention. Now I think there's no other one except for this one. So I'm done with this particular appointment component, right? I'm done with this appointment component. I'll come to user component, right? I'll go to doctor card. Doctor card, you can see this one. I'll put the stuff here, paste it here. Okay. I go to our doctor registration. Let's check doctor registration. I will check this and I will see it here. This is it here. I'm adding, and then also say here as well. I'm also adding. Then I'll scroll down to check if there is another one. Okay, look at this one as well. I will add. So you have to be very intentional on this. I'll look at check again. Do I need to? Do I still have any other one? I don't have any other one here. I'll go to what user login form. Under the user login form, I have this. So I have to change this, right? So this is because you are deploying it in different servers. But if you are deploying it in a single server, backend and front end in a single server, you don't need to worry about this. User registration. So user registration, do I need it? Okay, look at it here. User registration, I will add. User registration, I will add here, and then this one as well. Okay, now let's check again. Do we still have? Okay, look at this one as well. Please, sir, you need to check this thing thoroughly so that you are sure that everything is fine. Okay, this is what called hard coding. This is what called hard coding. But in DevOps, you don't do hard coding. We tell the developers to prepare what called environmental variable. So I'm adding for this one now. Environmental variable is what we use to do this one. But due to the fact that I'm not a developer and the developer is quite far from me, so I don't need to disturb myself. I just go and then do it manually, edit it. And there's also another learning curve for you, right? So that you understand how these things are done on the at the application level. Okay, so this is the part for this one. I will add as well. Remember that this is the front end. The front end is making a connection to the back end. So this thing you are seeing right now is just like an endpoint, the backend endpoint. Okay, this is just like backend endpoint, right? It's backend endpoint because the front end need to use the backend endpoint to deploy, deliver message, right? So now we are done with this. Now we are done with this. So what we need to do now is to initialize it and then push it to GitHub repository. Now, if you remember our GitHub strategy the other time we said first of all that we need to get what? A personal access token, right? So I've created a personal access token. Look at the personal access token. So I will get the URL of the front end. Look at the URL of the front end. There's the URL of the front end. The URL of the front end. I will open a notepad just to show us. This is my notepad, right? I'll put the URL here. I'm just showing this now for those of us that may not remember again. So this is going to be like a repetition. So what I will do is that, see, this stuff is not going to be permanent. I will delete it in just few seconds. That's the this particular token. All right. So first of all, you need to get your username. What's my username really? What's my username? Okay, this is my username. What's my username? Okay, let me get my username. So I'll click on the profile so I can get my username. So this is my username. Look at it here. Look at it here. This is my username. Support at this. So what I will do is that I go to my notepad. My notepad. Look at it. I paste it here, right? And then put semicolon here. This I'm using token to access it, and I put at in front of it. So between this token, between this double column and then at, I need to paste that token. Between this double colon and the at, I need to paste the what token. So I'll go and copy that personal token I created. Look at it here, and I'll come down here and paste it within here. Can you see it? I'll paste it here. Now when I've done that, all right, I have to copy. This is where I need to copy, right? I need to copy, and then see, this is my repository, right? So just remember that stuff that we just configured right now. So I need to do some things on the GitHub level. So what are the things I need to do? First, I need to do git init. Okay, so this is it. I need to do what? Git init. Okay, so first of all, what I need to do? Git. Okay, let me select bash. So this is my system. Now this is git. I have to do what? Git init, right? So this is to initialize the git, to initialize it. Now the next thing I have to do is what? To do git add. Git add, right? I've added everything, right? Can do git start, git status to check. You can see that everything is green, meaning that I've added all of things. The next line of action is what? Git commit, right? Git commit minus m updated front end code, right? So I'm gonna put a message. Then the next thing is what? Git branch minus capital M main, to change it from master to main. Then finally to push it, but before I push, I need to add the remote repository by typing what? Git remote add origin, right? So we don't need to copy this now. We need to copy that one that we just configured that will have token. Look at it here. That's what we need to copy, and then we come down here and then paste it. Can you see? Paste it like that and add. So we have added our Git repository. So because it needs to authenticate using the token, and remember that it is a private repository. That is why it needs to authenticate. Then the next thing we need to do is to configure our identity. Git config dash dash global user dot name, which is what our name is, what support digital with ng dot with ng. That's the name, followed by what? Git config global user dot what email, which is what? Support at digital with ng dot online. Right now, if we push it now, this is going to show that it supports is this guy that is making that push. Now let us git what? Git push origin man. Right, we are pushing the code now to GitHub. Right, we are pushing the code now to GitHub. Look at it now. We are pushing the code to GitHub. All right, you can see that we have pushed the code to GitHub. So it's no more like this. And again, let us refresh. Refresh this now. You see. Refresh. Wow. So you can see that the code is there now. And the person who made this change, look at his name. This is the person that pushed it, right? I pushed it what, 2 minutes ago. Good. Now, if you open this what source, open the source again, and then you will see that modules. This is the appointment module. Under appointment module, yes, you can edit it from here if you want. This appointment module, you can see that backend stuff. Look at it here. Can you see? That's the backend stuff. Check this one again. You can see the backend stuff. right? You can see it here. So now that we have this, so remember we need to, okay, let's just check what we have. So we have configured this and we have pushed it, uploaded to our front end repository. So we are done with this one. So the next line of action is to head over to the back end and configure crops origin policy on the back end. Now remember that what is going to be accessing the back end? The only thing that's going to be accessing the back end is what? The only thing that is going to be accessing the back end is the, look at it. That's what is going to be accessing the back end on a particular port 8080, right? Port 3000. Because the front end will be running on port 3000. Let's change this. It's going to be port 3000. All right. We're going to be running it on port 3000. So the front end is going to be accessed on port 3000. So what we're going to do now is to configure the cross origin access on the back end on port 3000. Okay. I think there's something that we did not do. Okay. Okay. Let's configure the cross origin policy on port 3000. Port 3000 on the server. I'll permit that on the server. Okay, let's go to the server. This is the backend server, right? We click SSH. We are heading over to the front and the backend first. Backend, I'm saying, and we are going back to backend first, so we can locate the cross origin policy. Yes, I know that we have already finished this backend and it's running, but we have to stop it and then check the cross origin policy again. Right? Sudo su backend. Okay. So the CD is here, ms, right? So this is it now. Nano. Okay. Okay. So for us to do this effectively, we will need to, right, remove this. That is this HSM. We need to delete this and go to the our VS Code, edit it, upload it, and then pull it to our local system, right? So for you, what I would like you to do is to clone our backend code, clone your front end code, clone the backend code, put it in your own repository. Then you can do the update like I did on the front end and push it. Do the update on the back end and then push it, because this one will contain a dummy data like that local host. Right? Let me go to my repository. So this is my repository. Okay, this is my repository. Let me go to the. So we have finished the back end, front end. It's still going to clone the front end, right? Let's go to the back end. So this is my backend now. Look at the backend. So this is my backend code. I've already cloned it to my local system. Okay. This is the backend code. And then if you check here, you can see that this is what we have for the backend code. This is just what we have. This is the hospital management backend master. So this is what I have. I can expand this source. Under the source, right, we have the main test. I can expand the main. When I expand the main, you can see that we have dental or management. So I click on that. Then coming down here, we have this component. Right, these are the controllers. We have the controllers. We have all these controllers, right? So what we need to do here, we may not even do anything here like this. We come to search. Look at search. And we can search for what? We can search for cross, right? If you did not see crops origin, you can search that local system. So just start local host 3000, right? So if you type local host, if you type local host right now, you will see where it shows this local host, this particular one, not this one here. You can just type localhost 3000. Now this is localhost 3000 is the front end, right? And you can see where the localhost front end. Look at these files now. these folders. These are where it's been permitted. Okay, this is where it's been permitted. This is the cross origin. So when you click that, you will come and you will put the, what are you putting here? You're putting the domain name of the front end. So let's go and get the domain name from Namecheap. This is our domain name, right? We copy that, copy that, because this is actually what is going to be accessing the front end. So we come down to the backend code. Sorry, this is not backend. So this is the backend, and then we have to put these guys here. I have to put this first. Okay, so it's accessing this on port 3000. We come down and check, no other one again. Can you see? So we click the next one, this one. We put that here. First, we are done for this. We move to the next one. We add, right? We are done with this. We come to the next one. Add. So you can see that we are done for all of them, right? So we have to save. And then we need to push it. Now, the same way we do it for the front end, right? The same way we do it for the front end. So let me, what I'm going to do now is this. I'm going to use that same methodology that I use on the front end. So I will, okay, I will, okay, this is the back end, right? So what I will do is that I will just um, update this particular one, update this one. So what I will do is that I have to go to this particular, okay, this is not, this is the front end. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to initialize the, I'm going to initialize by saying what? Um, okay, this is the code, right? I'm done with this thing. So I'm going to come here and then let me check for this. Do I need this? Okay, I don't need it. Okay, I don't need it really. Okay, what I'll do now is that I will what? Git what? Init. So I've initialized. So git config dash dash global user dot name support digital reach engine. Enter again. Git config dash dash global user dot email support. Okay, guys. Now that we have completed we have started the server, the backend server. Okay. So okay, I think I would like to check that. Like to check the backend server again and know that really that is really going through. Okay. So I'm trying to connect back again. I think I'm trying to connect back again to the backend. All right. Let's check that. Let's check that. Sudo su dash this cdhms. Okay. So this is the backend. I need to check status ps aux grep java to know whether it's running. It's not running. Look at the backend is not running. So I will have to start it by typing cd target and start it by typing what java minus j minus jar then type something and I will start. Okay, so the server is starting now. Look at it. The server has started. Okay, so it has started back again. So guys, I will have to go to the front end. I have to go to the front end and then start the front end. Okay, so from this, and I said that I need to install some dependencies. So what are the dependencies that I need to install? The dependencies I need to install is just what, like apt or type what sudo apt install, right, node.js, node.js, okay, and also I'll install what I saw npm minus y. So this is the software that two packages that I need to install for me to start, right, running the application, right, on the front end level. Okay, so we need to also go to the front end and click to connect to the front end so that we can start running that package. Okay, so bear in mind that our backend is running. Backend has started running on port what? On port 8080. So remember that you can test it by going to this and test it on what's Swagger. So if your front backend is running like this, that is the Swagger endpoint is running, the documentation. This is documentation showing you all the endpoints that have been listed as well. Can you see them? So you need to confirm that all these are running before you start the back end by front end. Okay. So under the front end section, okay, so this is the front end. I think this is my front end, right? So APM. So what we need to install, I've already installed that. Let's check that, right? npm minus v to show us the version. Look at it, npm version 10 is what I installed. And then what about node.js minus v? You can see minus node 20 is what I installed. So what you need to do is to just to go to Google and type how to install node.js version 20. You will see the documentation, and then you follow it and install it on Ubuntu. That is how to install node.js on Ubuntu, node.js 20 on Ubuntu. Okay, and they can quickly do that by going to the say how to install node.js version 20 on Ubuntu. Okay, so they will just show you anyone. You can pick any documentation that of your choice, like this one now. You can see this documentation, then you can now look at that. Okay, so you can see how this person installed. Look at how this person installed, and then node version is running. Especially this is what you need to download. Look at the package and then run the installation, and that's all. Okay, that is all. Just bear that in mind. Okay, so when the Node.js is now running, let's also bring the backend. Okay, you can see the backend is as well running. You can see the backend is now running, and as well the front end. So what we need to do is now to start the front end. Java, all right. So we need to start the front end. Sorry, this is npm start. Okay, so you need to start, right? Okay, so it's telling us that this a particular service is still running. Okay, what I will do is that I have to restart the system, reboot with minus y, just to reboot it so that, sorry, minus I want to reboot the system so that I can start a refresh installation. Okay, a fresh a reboot of the front end. Okay, all right, let me connect back again. So I'm connecting back to my virtual machine. It's connecting back. Authorize, establishing connection, right? So I just refresh the server by rebooting it. So now I'm back again to the server, to the su dash cdm. You can see that I'm in there, and I'll type npm start. Okay, npm start will start the application on port 3000. On port 3000, npm will start the application on port 3000. You can see the application has started on port 3000. And bear in mind that when we get to this stuff, you can see that this is our IP address. So I've already mapped it to the port number. Can you see this is the port number? This is the IP address. So what we can do, we can copy this, okay, and go to the browser, paste it with port what 3000. Enter, and you can see that we have gotten the front he has gotten the back front end. You can log in, you can register, you can log in. Okay. So this is actually what we are talking about. So if you have reached this level, you can see the back end. This is the back end side. Okay. And this is the front end side. So you can see that you can literally log in.